And we're back. Kia ora and welcome to the Select Committee, Maxim Institute's glimpse into the seething cauldron of our politics. We pick out the bits that are juicy, but also the bits that are meaningful. Welcome, Marianne. Welcome, Josiah. Great to have you with us this week. And boy, what a week we have lined up for you. We've got corruption, superannuation, and fake polls. We're going to dig into that soon, but also waiting at the end, Fantasy Beehive, where we look at our politicians. We've picked them. We see how they did. We've rated them. Who's up, who's down, who's not paying. We'll get to that eventually. But first up, corruption. And this is because the Serious Fraud Office is investigating the contractor alliance responsible for Auckland's motorway network and allegations of financial discrepancies up to 1.3 million. And apparently Waka Kotahi, New Zealand Transport Agency, is confirmed there's 6 separate investigations going on at the moment, totaling billions of dollars of spending. Oh my goodness, Josiah. Look, I tried to bribe the traffic officer on the way in here this morning. It didn't work. This is, are we really that corrupt?
Yeah, well, in short, it comes down to this. When you have high trust, low oversight, that equals a much higher chance of corruption. And that's what we're seeing here. So traditional models for delivering infrastructure, or at least a traditional contract approach would say, deliver X for Y number of dollars. And so if I'm saying build a stretch of motorway, I'm telling you how much I'm going to pay for that, and you have to try and deliver it under the cost to make a profit. And the incentives are there for you to try and keep things as cheap as possible. This alliance approach to infrastructure is because these are complex, large projects. We know what government spending is like. There can be changes, and so it's a kind of a shared cooperative where they take on the risks, the costs, the decision making all together. But one of the key features of this model is that it does depend on high trust, and it depends on a high degree of oversight within the parties as well, and that hasn't been the case with this most recent instance.
So more oversight will be needed if we are to regain our reputation, Marianne, as a non-corrupt country. Is this bad news for our reputation?
So the reputation is not great. I think the good news is the Serious Fraud Office is investigating, because we have a tendency in New Zealand. One of the reasons that we tend to do well on the anti-corruption ranking is because we're small. With smallness, you've got good transparency, and we've got a she'll be right attitude as well. So we're not good at accountability.
I guess too, but it's sort of like in New Zealand, you're like only 2 steps removed from the so we've got smaller social networks. So it's like I actually
you feel like you know what's going on.
Yeah, I met that bloke down at the football club, and he seemed all right.
And historically, we haven't gone into the overkill on micromanaging things. So this is a clear sign that we need to be better with accountability. The good news is the Serious Fraud Office is providing that, and hopefully it will disincentivize this kind of behavior.
Yeah, and what was interesting to me too about this was that the Transport Minister, Chris Bishop, said he was only informed of these investigations when the Sunday Star Times called him up about it. So that, in a sense, that's the, as you say, the SFO, Serious Fraud Office, doing its job, saying, not saying, hey, Minister, red flag, we're doing this investigation. I see that as a positive. I do think we have an issue now. Not many people know about the name of Jason Koraheki, who was involved found guilty in 2024 of a fraud of up to $1 million in terms of he accepted gifts in exchange for awarding work to himself. He was the broad spectrum road contracting manager, and several schemes that involved some subcontractors, fake invoices, and so again, where's that? I guess the people who are in control of this need accountability, and this investigation. There will be obviously there may be charges, but let's put in the structure to take care of that, Josiah.
Yeah, and that's where institutional oversight really matters. In developed countries, you would think that the institutions are strong enough to protect against things like this, but we see in countries that are characterized by corruption, people actually use institutions for their own benefit, and that's what we've seen in this case, which is being investigated at the moment, bribes being taken in order to offer preferential treatment for contracts. And yeah, this really is a case where people are using public institutions, public funds for their own benefit. And that's something that really does need to be taken seriously.
Yeah, because it erodes trust in institutions, and we're at a time where trust is actually high trust societies actually function economically better than low trust ones. Like if I have to bribe 7 people to get my project going, then
it's just inefficient.
Yeah,
forget the morality part of it. It's just inefficient.
Yeah.
How dare you? I say keep the morality part, and it's inefficient. Don't be so binary, Josiah. All right, let's keep the argument going here. The superannuation, in a sense, I mean, this is like the golden goose, isn't it? That National has signalled that they are up for a debate about the age, or at least the scheme itself. After reports from Treasury, the OECD, Marianne, National's voter base, somewhat older, you would think that if they're taking the superannuation golden goose and saying, we might need to cut a leg or two off it, that's political suicide?
Yeah, I think this issue's always been seen as political suicide because we've known for decades that this is not affordable, it's not going to be affordable. But they, I think, to their credit, are being honest and saying, even though, I mean, who wants to vote to delay their own retirement? I mean, nobody wants to think that they're going to be working at Woolies when they're 75. This is nothing.
Wait.
There's no
Marianne,
incentive for anybody to say, yes, please do this.
Marianne, me and my bride have a 3-year-old. I'm currently 60. I'll be happy to be working at Woolies when I'm 75 because the robots will be taking over everything. So just like FYI, keep moving.
Yeah. And this is the thing. It comes back to expectations. Yeah. You have every expectation that you're not going to, go shut yourself up at home when you're 65. Some people do. And for those voters, it's actually really confronting to have to deal with the idea that they're going to have to push out their work life a few years when they've been paying into something that they think they were guaranteed. So this conversation is useful because I think we need to reset people's expectations, not just as voter bases, but also as people who are making financial plans for their own lives. We've got KiwiSaver. It'll make a dent for those who are signed up. Not everybody's signed up. So we need good incentives and good mechanisms where people can future-proof their own retirement without relying on an ever-shrinking younger demographic to support them.
And that's, I think, what National is proposing, is turning off the tap slowly, not
It has to be slowly.
It has to.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because it's going to materially impact people and the whole expectations thing.
People have made plans.
This has been something that's been kind of guaranteed to us.
I wonder actually if people haven't made plans and they've just relied on.
That's been the problem.
It's going to be there. And look, here's my public service announcement. If you're under 45. Start saving, stop blowing your dough. No more Uber Eats. Josiah, you appear to be under 45. I guess you've started saving.
Yeah, look, I mean, this feels like an attack on me. I mean, the government's just taken away fees free. I mean, and then we've got retirement. That's being pushed back. In 2065, which is when some of these projections are sort of pointing to, I will be 65. I'm sitting here hoping that I will receive my retirement at 65. Maybe that's an unrealistic expectation.
You are dreaming.
I'm dreaming, yeah. Look, I think the government, or at least National, had no choice but to take this seriously. It is a fiscal question for the government. It's obviously social and cultural as well, and Marianne touched on that in terms of expectations and preparation. But I mean, the expenses to government are astronomical. The Treasury's long-term fiscal insights report produced some research analysis, a graph about what government expenditure will be if there are no policy interventions and we just sort of let things run their course. So enter Exhibit A to the courtroom. This is a graph from their report, and I mean,
look at that.
The graph is just astronomical. So we have core Crown tax revenue declining while the core Crown expenditure is going up, and it's not quite exponential, but it is certainly picking up at a rapid pace, and that really comes back down among other things to our aging population. It's a demographic question. some of these reports, so you mentioned the OECD, Treasury, the Reserve Bank, they've highlighted aging as a real problem for our country because you have two major cost factors associated with that. Healthcare, the longer people live, the more health problems they have, the more demand they put on the system, and healthcare is already one of the biggest areas of government spending. And then, of course, you have superannuation. At the time, the system was designed for shorter lifespans. You check out at 65 and you get your payment, but people didn't live as long after retirement. Now people on average are living 20 years longer. And so that means the cost burden goes up for the government. The system was simply not designed for what we have today.
For the world we have today. And I was recently at a launch of some research in Parliament for Access Matters Aotearoa, and there were obviously MPs in the audience, and what they were saying is that actually disability is now not a peripheral issue. With an aging demographic, there's an increasing requirement for buildings and for structures and support around disability, because as people age, they become less able, put it that way. And the pitch was, hey, you MPs, you want a vote-winning pitch for this election, go into, or maybe it might be next election, but just start thinking about how you can tap into what's really happening. And it's not solely aging, it's the fact that we are not replenishing ourselves with kids.
Yeah, I think Miriam might have alluded to that stat. In the 60s, it was 7-to-1 working age to support a retiree. Today, it's 4-to-1, and 2065, 2-to-1. So the pyramid is inverting, and it really is a kind of pyramid scheme where you require a broad base to support a narrow top. Well, we're currently looking at it more of a rectangle shape. That's where we're headed.
Okay, it's easy for us to opine about this, but political price. So National's actually bitten the bullet. Do you think they'll pay a political price for this, Marianne? I can't see Labour saying we'll change it. My understanding is Labour not going to change it. New Zealand First, definitely not. Possibly ACT might be for it, but will National pay a political price for this?
It's so hard to tell. I mean, it seems
because
like
there's realism
yes,
as well. It's
to,
like we're being realistic.
But for people like me who are looking at the numbers and going, we have to look at the grand scheme of things. And there's a trade-off for everything. The trade-off for keeping it at 65 is more costly than just going, we need to work longer or better prepare ourselves for retirement. So I hope they don't, because I think it's really important. They probably will in some ways, yeah.
So just like realism, not a vote winner?
I think for people who are concerned about the government's books, I think it is a vote winner. This is arguably the first time the government has shown fiscal restraint. They've been criticised for reallocating spending, so making cost savings, but then spending it elsewhere. It's not really a cost savings. It does seem that they're taking these projections seriously. So yeah, for some it will be a winner, but National does tend to have an older support base, and so if you're approaching your 65 years and you've made a plan to receive your superannuation at that point, I think you'll be disappointed.
Okay, but here's the breaking news, that the poll of polls, and this is where we get to fake polls. By fake polls, I mean polls that sort of concentrate on individual parties rather than coalition blocks. There's a new poll of polls by Motu Research that has a different methodology. And what's fascinating about that is that it evaluates the coalitions against each other and does some I think it's 4,000 simulations of different electoral scenarios. It turns out that under current polling, the National New Zealand First ACT coalition has an 89% chance of being re-elected. Marianne, that seems so boring compared to the polls that we've been hearing and the headlines that have been generated. What's your view?
Yeah, and this is the noise which gets captured in those polls that are looking at snapshots, and that makes it more headline worthy. It's more interesting when you just slice off things.
They're up, they're down.
Yeah, you just slice off little things. As soon as you aggregate things, it's usually much more boring. Reality is usually much more boring than these little things that are designed to get people to speculate. And the reality is the coalition's probably going to get back in.
Okay. Josiah, is that, again, and this is the second sort of iteration of realism versus what's interesting. Your take on the poll of polls. Well, do you think it'll actually have a material effect, though? Aren't we in some ways addicted to crisis, certainly in the news cycle?
Well, I think it's a good thing that the Herald are doing. There was something similar on the Wikipedia page around New Zealand polling, obviously not as advanced, but what it did do was it presented an aggregation and a smoothing of the polls, because what a poll is simply what 1,000 people think in a given week, and it can swing dramatically. It's based on the news or how people are feeling economically, so you do get that noise, those spikes, and when you focus in on party politics, National's down, then it becomes a question of, well, is the whole government sort of under threat? And what this does is it's actually taking more of a block approach, which is how our MMP system works. Where we do have blocks, we've got a coalition government and we have an opposition. And what it's saying is, well, if a vote was held today, what is the likelihood that this coalition will return to government?
But it's so boring, 89% likelihood. Where's the headline in that?
Well, so there's a distinction between 89% likelihood and 89% in the lead, and so
that's true.
There's about 5 points that separate them, and this is where Māori seats could complicate the equation. What we could get is an overhang. So normally Parliament has 120 seats, and you get a proportional. Allotment of seats. Overhangs happen when a party gets more seats than they should according to the proportion of the vote that they get. So Te Pāti Māori tends to poll under the 5% mark.
But they win electoral seats.
Yes.
Or they have done in the past before the events, I would say cataclysmic for them as a party events of the recent year.
So say they got 4.9%, they would basically be entitled to 6 seats in the House, because that's what 5% of the 120 seats are. But if they won all 7 Māori seats, or even 6 Māori seats, well, all of a sudden they have a 1 or 2 seat overhang, because they've got more than what their proportional party vote would give them. And so that's where actually the election may be closer than we think, because we're not dealing with a poll, and we're not dealing with proportion strictly. We're actually dealing with the number of seats in Parliament. So that could be a wrinkle.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Josiah. That's a strong argument for continuing to pay attention to the political cycle. That's why you're here. Thanks for being with us. We're now at a Maxim Institute's Fantasy Beehive section. This is where we pick a team of politicians and we explain who they are and why we picked them. So how have they done this week? Marianne, who did you pick?
I had Willow Jean Prime, Lan Pham, who is the Greens environment spokeswoman, which is a surprisingly lonely job, but she's been speaking out about environmental issues. And then Paul Goldsmith, because the scrapping of the BSA was coming up. And I expected there to be a little more kerfuffle around that, because there's this talk about...
You thought Goldsmith would be your sort of workhorse in the ratings.
Because people were talking about the BSA being scrapped, and now it's going to be a free-for-all in media and everything, as if they have a moral compass, which, they've got a political compass, and we're not going to miss that. And it turns out there wasn't a whole lot of chatter. It was a bit of a...
So no one, it's like BSA
There
scrapped.
was some media about it, but actually... No, we're not going to miss them. So I thought he'd score higher. But anyway, that was why I picked him.
Okay. A litany of disappointment from Marianne. What about you, Josiah? What was your pick?
The disappointment continues. I picked Labour's finance spokesman, Barbara Edmonds. You think you're approaching the election, you'll get some cut through in the media. She finished 68th this week. So she scored me 1 point.
68th out of how many?
Out of the full list of MPs.
Wow,
so,
68th out of 120 something.
123, yeah. So not strong. Unfortunately, also had Finance Minister Nicola Willis, and she got some good media attention, so some points there. And then also Cameron Luxton, so he asked a question in the House and got some points in the media as well. So it's kind of flat week a little bit. We didn't get, I didn't get any of the big scores associated with bills being passed or passing first or second readings, because you can often get quite big spikes there in scores. So yeah, a bit of a flat week for me, I feel.
Okay. And look, the wider context of this too is the narrative that where's Labor in policy in terms of this? Yes, they're criticising government, but what policies are they advancing? I think maybe you chose Barbara Edmonds because, okay, so here's the criticism. Is there some policy going to come out? Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, so maybe I'll keep her in my back pocket for, maybe closer to the election time. Closer to budget, I should say, because hopefully she'll be commenting then. But yeah, just not getting the cut through or the media visibility that you would sort of expect of a Labour spokesperson on finance. So surprising.
And my take is that a lot of the stuff we're apolitical as a country. So look, don't even expect any interest until 3 weeks out from the election, possibly 2. My pick. Look, I had Shane Jones and Chris Hipkins, but my pick was my workhorse, if you like, was Judith Collins, the crusher. And why? And who actually has? She's just done her retirement speech. Why did I pick her? Well, she harkens back to a distant era of politics, and that was the pre-focus group politics, where you just you say, you know what, we might have had a few drinks last night and thought, what about if we crush boy racers' cars? What a brilliant idea, Judith. Let's celebrate that. And look, I think she's a very, politicians of a different era, and I would put, say, Winston Peters in here, there's an intuitive sense of the electorate. There's also a nose for what gets people going. I think Judith Collins had both of those. Hard work, but that sense of being close to the people in some way, shape or form, she had that in a way that I'm not sure later generations of political figures who come from a more beltway sort of paradigm have. So Josiah, who won?
Yeah, so looking at the scoreboard, we have Marianne coming in with 9 points. I only do 1 point better. Thanks, Barbara Edmonds, 10 points. And Tim, you take it again, 15 points. Congratulations.
15 points. All right. So, Boy Racer, that car of yours, it's going back to the scrapyard. Thanks a lot, Judith Collins. Appreciate your service. And we'll see you next week on the Select Committee. Thanks for watching.